Stolen crops, missing animals. It's happening more than you think. Agriculture crime is a growing problem across Hawaii, hitting farmers, ranchers, and even backyard gardeners. And it is far from harmless as some may think, even costing one man his life. So what's being done to stop this from happening? Tonight's live broadcast and live stream of insights on PBS Hawaiʻi start now.
Aloha and welcome to Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi. I'm Lauren Day. Whether it's missing mangoes to stolen livestock, ag crimes affecting our local farmers and ranchers are more common and more dangerous than you might think. Tonight, we're exploring this often unreported threat and seeing what needs to change to make our communities safer. We look forward to your participation in tonight's show. You can email or call in your questions, and you'll find a live stream of this program at pbshawaii.org and on the PBS Hawaiʻi YouTube page. Now to our guests in studio. Senator Tim Richards grew up on Kaʻu Ranch in Waimea and now represents the town and north shore of the Big Island in the state legislature. He also serves as vice chair of the Senate's Agricultural Committee. Lani Petrie is the president of the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council and currently runs Kapāpala Ranch on Kaʻu on the Big Island. In 2015, she was inducted into the Paniolo Hall of Fame. Brian Miyamoto is the executive director of the Hawaii Farm Bureau. It's the largest agricultural advocacy organization in the state with 1,800 farm family members statewide. And Jeff Malate is a deputy prosecuting attorney for Hawaii County. He joined the office in 2002 after moving to the Big Island from Oahu in 2001. He is a graduate of the William S. Richardson School of Law. Thank you all for being here tonight and for the two of you for flying in to Oahu to be here. Brian, I want to start with you. Just how common are ag crimes in the state of Hawaii?
Very common, but as you said, underreported. The United States Department of Agriculture and the State Department of Agriculture did a survey in 2019. That's the last data we have. And it showed that the impact to farmers and ranchers was $14.4 million. We know that's underreported. Ag crimes are happening every day to our farmers and ranchers. So it is a growing threat, as you said. It's something that needs to be addressed, and we're thrilled with what the legislature did this year to hopefully reduce some of the ag crimes because it affects every farmer and rancher across the state of Hawaii.
You know, I know our viewers weren't listening in when we were, waiting to go live tonight, but I was shocked, frankly, just hearing about from all of you how often these ag crimes happen. Why do the four of you think that, people who are not farmers and ranchers don't hear about these crimes so much?
It's not treated with any importance up to this point. The comments have been made, they're just trespassing. What's the big deal? They're just taking mangoes. What's the big deal? We're talking about people's livelihoods. And Cranston Pia, loss of one of our ranchers because we had someone that was trespassing, illegally hunting. That's the big deal. And as Brian and I, we've all known each other for a long time, this has been something we've been working on literally for decades and trying to heighten the awareness, first of all, of the crimes and show the importance of what we need to do to get this done. One of the big challenges, Big Island, borrowing a statement from Mayor Kim, was the problem with the Big Island is it's big. The point of that statement is in agriculture, typically things are stretched out. And in my Senate district alone, you can put 3 Oahus. So how do we guard that? How do we protect what's going on out there? We're gonna have to have a mindset change, a shift in the paradigm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Lauren, as the senator said, a lot of our farms and ranches in rural areas, we have less law enforcement presence there. There's eyes watching. Ag crimes are not just theft anymore. It's theft, vandalism, you hear trespassing, poaching, and sometimes these crimes don't rise to the level as other more high-profile crimes, if we want to say that. So less officers, maybe the crimes aren't considered as important as Senator says. Oh, what's wrong with taking some mango, some banana, or trespassing to either go hunting or even sometimes to go to a hiking trail. And so our farmers and ranchers with open spaces, they can't afford to fence every piece of their property. They can't put cameras up everywhere. We also have an immigrant farming population. Sometimes there's a language barrier. Sometimes just in the nature of where the farms are, it takes a long time for the police to get out there. We've heard from our farmers and ranchers that maybe nothing really happens, so they stop reporting the crimes. So there's a multitude of reasons why we have so much ag crime, and we're not really doing much until now. Our police departments are doing the best that they can. They're understaffed. Our prosecutors are doing the job that they can, the best they can. But again, having a dedicated law enforcement branch in the Department of Law Enforcement to address agricultural crimes, working with farmers and ranchers, we believe will go a long way to hopefully minimizing, deterring some of these criminals from going after the easy targets. Sometimes the farmers and ranchers are just easy targets.
Lani, unfortunately, I know you've been a victim of these ag crimes way too many times. Can you give our viewers a picture of what your ranch is like, and give us an idea of what you've been through?
Okay, so our ranch, the size of our ranch would be the equivalent of Pearl City to Cocoa Head, in a district that is the size of Molokai. On a typical day, there's 3 to 5 policemen on duty. So you're pretty much on your own. What I've seen in my lifetime, though, is it's a game of probability. I was raised on this island, Oahu, and what happened to Cranston could have happened to my father 50 years ago, 60 years ago. What happened to Cranston could have happened to my husband 10 years ago. This is a game of probability. It's not a game. The probability is it's going to happen. And now there's some awareness because unfortunately the Pia family lost somebody. But it was going to happen, and it happened. I'm glad that this has come to the legislature, and they're doing something about it. I think one of the biggest things that can come, from my opinion, is just public awareness. I mean, just in the other room, you didn't realize what happens on these ranches. So but they're...
Yeah, I know we're talking about Duke's Law, and I want to dive into that, but can you also tell us, just from your experience, what are some of the ag crimes that you've been experiencing on the Big Island? We don't have as big a theft issue as other places. Our big problem is night hunting, disturbing animals that could potentially cause public safety issues. When animals they sleep at night. If they're startled and 400 animals jump up and run, our highway frontage is Highway 11, and people speed down that road at night, and our big concern is public safety. If animals get startled, get on that highway, we are going to be liable for anybody that gets in an accident on that highway. So we're pretty front and center when our exposure is very high. Lani just talked about cattle getting out, hunters on your property trespassing, spooking the animals. Senator Richards, can you maybe chime in about some other ag crimes out there, or that you've experienced even firsthand?
Not unlike Lani and what she's experienced on our place. Same deal. We worry about animals getting out. There's a story, and it's actually not a story, it's another rancher that had frontage on the highway, had someone come in and steal the fence posts. The fence was standing, and from a distance you could see the fence standing, but it didn't have the posts in it. So if you put cattle in there, they would go up against the fence and the fence would lie down. So then the cattle get on the highway. Liability. Whose? The rancher's done everything they can. We've had the illegal poaching, the illegal hunting, and the trespass. 2.5, maybe 3 months ago now, we had cowboys caught 3 guys going hunting in the middle of the day, 200 yards from my home. My young kids are out there, they're armed. The reason they're hunting is because they know there's no penalty. Nothing's going to happen. What's the big deal? They're just crossing the land. And what Lani was talking about, raising the awareness is really important because that will help us communicate how serious this is.
Jeff, hearing about what Lani's been through, what Senator Richards has been through, what's the Hawaii County Prosecutor's Office today trying to do to combat this issue?
So a few years ago, we started the task force. There started a meeting between the police department and some of the county officials and members of our office. And what we tried to do specifically, though, with the types of cases that came across my desk were agriculture crimes. So I didn't see too much of the livestock or cattle or trespassing. But the problem we had, I don't know if it's like mostly on the east side, is that there are particular farms that were being targeted and agriculture was being stolen. And it seemed like there were just like a handful of individuals that were committing these crimes. And the challenge was to try to identify how to get the best evidence out of these cases. Because I think it's been stated like the resources aren't as plentiful. So, if you steal from Target, you have like surveillance cameras, you have dedicated loss prevention agents. So this bill to provide more resources maybe for law enforcement would actually help with a dialogue between, I guess, law enforcement and the prosecutor to try to come up with the best evidence that we can. Other things we try to do as a deterrent for, I guess, specific ag theft is we actually got some mugshots of individuals who were either convicted or arrested for like ag theft. So we tried to identify these individuals. And we actually went to the farmer's market. Some of our investigators from the office went to the farmer's market, handed them out, trying to, let them know like, these individuals here, if you see them around, be wary of what they're trying to sell. And there have been some merchants also who may have been more willing to buy from these individuals, like whether or not they know these individuals are suspects, we can't really say. But that is another element to this, is that like the people who are stealing agriculture, sometimes they have people who are willingly buying from them.
Is that because it's cheap? They're selling it for cheap?
They are.
Oh, yes.
If you cut off the market, now there's not a lot of value in a criminal stealing. If I can't sell it anywhere. But you're right. So they didn't put any money into the production of those products. They stole it. So they can sell it. They can undercut the legitimate farmer. And so if we eliminate a lot of those markets, right, and there are laws on the books, there are documentation that's required, and the police can check that. But again, having a dedicated police force within the Department of Law Enforcement, they may start being able to do that. And so now you eliminate these markets that the criminals are selling to. What's the value? I mean, you're not going to steal a whole bunch of crops for your own consumption. They're stealing it to sell it. They're stealing our produce. They're stealing our plants. They're stealing equipment. So again, it's not just the theft of crops. It's not just poaching or trespassing. There's also vandalism. We've heard situations where maybe the farmer rancher knows who's stealing from them. As Jeff said, they kind of identify a few folks. And because there's no real penalty and there's no real punishment when those criminals are turned in by the farmer and nothing happens, and they come back and now it's retribution. Instead of stealing, they may burn down a tractor. They may damage their property.
Cut down 7,000 papaya trees in one night.
Cut down their irrigation.
Is that what happened to you?
No,
We
it
had-
happens on our island. Somebody gets mad and
About a decade ago, we had a bunch of papaya trees they just maliciously cut down. So it's not only the loss of that particular crop, it's the lifetime of that tree. And so some laws have been changed to at least consider that, because again, a farmer and rancher, they put all their money into producing that crop, ready for the harvest. And hopefully when that harvest comes and they can sell that crop or that livestock, they'll make their money back and make a little bit of money. When these ag crimes, when it's stolen, it's gone. They're in the hole, they're in the negative at this point, and they've got to start all over again. They've got to get funding, right? I mean, and if this keeps happening, weather, the tariffs, costs of energy and fuel, land costs, water costs, all these things is what the farmer has to deal with on a daily basis. You add in a well underreported $14.4 million impact to Hawaii farmers and ranchers. Farmers and ranchers are resilient, but at some point, sometimes it's just not going to make any sense.
It costs everybody because that translates to higher costs going forward. And we keep talking about wanting to be food self-reliant, food secure. We import 90% of what we eat. In order to get there, we actually have to support agriculture. And that comes with policy and then enforcement of the policy, and that's what we're all talking about here.
So Jeff, today, if someone is caught, what would the penalty be?
It would depend on what's taken and how much is taken. So we can deal with, I mean, just to speak generally, like if it's beyond a certain amount, it could be like a felony, so a C-class felony. And that's, you can go to prison for about 5 years for that. If you're placed on probation, it's 4 years. When they're placed on probation, it can range from anything from, and this is where I think the frustration comes in. So it can range anything from, we can ask for jail, but it's from 0 to 1 year for a C-class felony. And so this is, I think, a lot of the frustration comes from the farmers, is that like it's not enough. You know, the jail isn't enough to cause a deterrent. And so when they say, what I'm hearing from Senator Richards is like, you know, the penalties need to be tougher. The penalties are there, but the range that we can, that we sometimes sentence somebody to is different. It's becomes a challenge in a way, and I really do appreciate all this information because it's, you know, it's all a learning, you know, about the impacts of the farmers and ranchers. And so it's our job now as prosecutors to convince the judges, because they hand down the sentences. And, you know, sometimes there is that attitude, like, you know, this is a property crime as opposed to like a crime against a person. You know?
Which is why in Duke's law, we take that latitude out and mandate jail time. We don't have the latitude, not for the first offense. Nobody wants to punish a kid.
For habitual crimes.
Habitual
Even
crimes.
when like somebody is taken into custody and they're arrested, and so they have to come before the court. So that's one of the considerations. They'll say like, oh, this is a property crime, so the court may let them out at that time, as opposed to a crime against a person.
Since we're talking about Duke's Law and it's been brought up, Senator, can you tell me a little bit about, you know, Cranston's death, how that personally impacted you, and why you introduced this legislation?
What happened about 14 months ago, Cranston Duke Pia was killed. He was executed. What had happened was he was out on his ranch and there was a dog came out of the bushes. He fired, first he yelled, calling to see if someone was there. He fired his rifle to scare the dog off. Apparently the owner came out and killed him. His mother was there. And it was 3 or 4 days after this happened. Mutual friends of his mother and me, longtime family that I grew up with, contacted me and said, will you meet with her? And so she came to my office. I gotta tell you, that's one of the hardest meetings I had to go through, because what do you say to a mother? She was resolved, she was pointed, and she said, please don't let my son's death be for nothing. And I gave her my word, I wasn't gonna let it go. And so that started the ball rolling. And we started identifying what the issues, you know, what Jeff's talking about. We have trespass, we have theft, we have vandalism. We have all these different aspects. So how do we start chipping away at this? What happened was we worked on this all last interim, starting in early summer. I had 3 versions of the bill, one from the Attorney General's office where they really ramped up the penalties, one from the Department of Agriculture where we looked at enforcement coming through the regulatory side, and then we had the Department of Law Enforcement, how creating this not task force, but a program where we actually have law enforcement of agricultural crimes. This has morphed over throughout the entire session, and it happened what I was hoping would. We brought it together so we had everything put in there, the enforcement side as well as increase in penalties. And between all of that, that came forth, and it was named the Cranston Duke Pia law to honor him, but also to bring it home that it's about a person, and this is about livelihoods for our community, and it's personal. This is personal.
Where does it stand right now?
It has cleared both chambers. There is a funding aspect of it, so I was very, very appreciative of what Ways and Means Chair Donovan Dela Cruz was able to get done. It is waiting to go up to the governor's desk for a signature.
How does the farming community feel about Duke's Law? Do you think it'll help?
We do. As Senator said, you know, he put a lot of work in it. I want to thank all of his colleagues at the legislature. On the House side, Representative Kristen Kahalo, who's also from Hawaii Island, the chair of the House Ag Committee, worked really well with the Finance Committee and her colleagues. Senator Gabbard is the chair of the House Agriculture Committee. But again, Senator Richards, Chair Kahalo, did a lot of the heavy lifting. It's got several components. As you said, it increases some of the penalties. It also offers, I think, some funding for some mitigation for the farmers and ranchers. Creates a law enforcement division for agriculture, essentially in the Department of Law Enforcement. Warm bodies, an assistant chief, some investigators, law enforcement officers, boots on the ground. And so it's a pilot program in 2 counties, Hawaii County and Siddon County and Honolulu. And again, these officers will be dedicated to farmers and ranchers. They'll understand farming and ranching. They'll understand the laws that are on the books, current HRS. They'll understand the community, and they'll have a better idea of what's going on and how to better deter and solve crimes if need be. We're going to have dedicated law enforcement community within the Department of Law Enforcement that is going to investigate agricultural crimes, and we expect to see a reduction. We're going to have our own ag and farming police department, so to speak.
I think, too, this bill, you guys are the experts, but what I read in it is that anything that contributes to the crime, their guns can be taken?
Forfeitures.
Forfeiture, yep.
Now you're going to talk about something that's going to be deterrent. That's my grandfather's gun.
Yep.
Do you feel hopeful that your stress will go down once this becomes law?
Well, when you start to make it personal back to them, you bet it's going to go down. Yeah, we work really well with Doe Care, and Doe Care officer came out, did a surprise visit, and took a bunch of guns.
There's civil penalties.
They still got to go to court.
Forfeitures.
Go see Jeff's deal.
Yeah.
But with this law, they can actually lose them.
There's so many things that are in here that is going to help. Again, the forfeiture, not just the guns, you use a vehicle on the property and use a gun. Those things could be, you could lose those.
Yeah.
And so again, we want deterrences. We need to help the farmers and ranchers. Department of Ag can do civil penalties.
Yep.
Habitual crimes now, it could be a Class C felony. And you heard Jeff talk about what those penalties are. So again, there's a whole bunch, as Senator Richards said, it started as 3 different bills, working with the legislature, with his colleagues, working with his colleagues on the House side, with Rep. Kahaloa. They came up with this bill, and at the end of the session, or end of the conference, Ways and Means, Senator Dela Cruz and Representative Yamashita found additional money to fund those boots on the ground, which are really going to make a difference.
Jeff, do you think this will make your job easier?
Oh, I think so. If there are dedicated law enforcement or resources for that, like I did the Target comparison, right? So with Target, there's people dedicated to crime prevention. So this would help with the communication, and we can directly tell them what we need and what they're used to. So with these loss prevention agents, whether it be Target or some sort of retail establishment, they have a form which they're used to, and they know which boxes to check off, what to write, and enough, or just the bare bones things that they need to have in order for it to be a successful prosecution. So things like continuous observation through the aisles, and they didn't have permission past cash registers without paying, that kind of stuff. It seems like little things, but it actually really helps the case.
Let's get to some of our viewer questions because we've got that coming in. This first caller wants us to kind of go back to the basics. They're asking us if we can better explain what these ag crimes are. So maybe you guys can all weigh in, but Brian, can you give us some context? Who are doing these, who's doing these crimes? Why are they doing it? And maybe some other examples of the types of crimes. I know we talked about, letting the cattle out and stealing fruits and other things, but maybe you can give some context.
So when we start with ag crimes, obviously we talk about theft. And then people think theft of produce, right? Theft of you talked about mangoes, bananas, any crops. And a lot of times it's for them to sell, right? They're selling the crops, they're selling whatever they're stealing equipment. You heard Senator and Lani talk about trespassing for hunting, for poaching, trespassing. Sometimes they're just trespassing to go to, as I said, a trail or a waterfall or something. And while doing that, they may be spooking the animals, or they may be going through somebody's farm and stealing some crop. And you think, well, if they steal a banana or two, what's a big deal? If you get hundreds of people doing that,
is it that many?
It becomes a big deal. So it's different for different farms. Some of our nursery folks, they have some high-priced items, some plants, and so they get targeted. They'll come at night, and again, they know what they're looking for. They'll target them. They'll kind of put them by the border of the property. They'll jump over and they'll wait till it's clear, and then they'll come back and they'll steal it. So now it's pretty quick crime. They know what they're doing. Vandalism. I mean, you've heard us talk about how some of it's retribution, some of it is just bad people doing bad things. So ag crimes runs a gambit. There's a lot. People think it's just theft. It's a lot more than theft. It's theft. It's trespassing. It's vandalism. And not just theft of crops, theft of equipment, theft of supplies. It could be somebody that wants a generator, and they'll come in and they'll steal the generator, and we never find them. So there's a bunch of different aspects to ag crimes. We used to call it ag theft, and that's why we call it ag crimes now.
Lani, how often is this happening on your ranch?
Every day.
Every day?
Yeah. There's, definitely the weekends are higher. Moonlight nights are higher. But yeah, all the time.
I can't imagine as a rancher you're up early, probably before the sun comes up, I'm guessing, just taking a wild guess, and then you work your whole day and you still have to deal with the after effects of this.
Yeah. Of course, you can't be there every night, but where we have high exposure, like we're getting ready to ship cattle, and that's a third or a fourth of the year's income, then we're out all the time. But it's impossible to be out every single night. Can't.
Joe from Oahu is asking, if you install cameras, can they get a tax write-off? And if they catch the perp on camera, can they use it in the courts to prosecute them?
A camera would get shot immediately on our property.
How many cameras do you need to put? I mean, some have. Lani, how big is your ranch?
34,000 acres.
So as a prosecutor, I would say yes, the cameras would help, but practically speaking, to do that with these ranchers and farmers, it doesn't seem feasible.
And it's really hard with the kind of cameras you can buy. It seems like it's easy, but it's not. They got the range of motion, and it's every second, and I mean, I've given up.
So how do you know when someone is on your property and those hunters are there?
Oh, my dogs tell me.
And
in the morning, my dogs don't lie.
Yeah.
I can tell exactly where they went. If you see a footprint, fine, but my dogs will tell me exactly where people went.
Eric on YouTube is commenting, and perhaps someone can weigh in. Game cameras and cooperation with local PD has been essential in reducing ag crime on the Hamakua coast. Are you familiar with game cameras?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And these are all things that help. Again, heightening the awareness, using the game cameras, they motion detected, I think is how they operate. And again, having some proof, having some way of being able to document what's going on, that helps. But getting the warm bodies that Brian talked about, that's what's going to help. It's not just having those bodies, but these people, these officers will be connected to the agricultural community. They're going to know the farmers and ranchers. And so the idea there is to develop those relationships. So then those investigators, those enforcement officers will then start to recognize some of the potential perpetrators. So putting it all together, not one thing is going to work. We're going to have to do a lot of
A
things.
comprehensive plan, and absolutely cameras will help. We're not saying it doesn't, but again, the 2019 numbers of $14.4 million, $11.2 million was for security. That's a lot of money. Again, farmers and ranchers, razor-thin margins. It's just another expense that can make them unprofitable. So cameras can help, and the beauty with Duke's Law is, as we believe there is some funding that can help the farmers and ranchers maybe purchase some of those. Department of Law Enforcement is running a pilot program with some drones, with cameras. Again, a more comprehensive plan, which we believe Duke's Law kind of sets the stage for. And, you know, it was unfortunate. It was an unfortunate and unnecessary death. And if this is the legacy, still you cannot replace Duke's life, but at least it brought to the forefront just this growing threat, how bad ag crimes is, and that's the worst of it. And so we're so appreciative to the legislature. This, we believe, is just a start. The original bill that Senator Richards introduced asked for 45 warm bodies in Department of Law Enforcement. We'd like to see it get up to that point, at that level at some point, but we're having to start a pilot so that we can get some data and we can hopefully see some reduction and support the police department and support the prosecutors also with the Department of Law Enforcement to reduce. And just the awareness, as Lani says, as Senator says, I think it's going to go a long way.
Yeah, and so great that we can have a discussion like this for a full hour. I want to read Christopher from Waimanalo's comment. This is not a question, but I'll read the comment, and then perhaps if one of you want to weigh in or add something to what Christopher's saying. He said, I grew up as a farmer's kid. We used to raise pigs and flowers. People would steal them all the time. They would never report it. They were afraid of repercussions from the thieves. We need an agricultural force that uses drones to protect from poachers and thieves. I personally know people who poach cattle and pigs. It is terrible. We need someone to help our farmers.
That's exactly what we're talking about. The Duke's Law breaks that inertia and starts it.
As we're going through the session with the three bills, again, with an unfortunate death, but to bring the community together, not just the ranchers, not just the farmers, the Cattlemen's Council, Managing Director Nicole Galassi was there all the way through, the Attorney General's office. Unfortunately, Cranston Pia's Ohana had to come, but they were there at every single hearing. And so to have everybody come together, working with the legislature, working with Senator Richards with his leadership, Senator Gabbard on the other side, Representative Kahaloa, this is what we have. So that comment points to what this bill hopefully will accomplish or provide. Increased and enhanced penalties, forfeiture, some civil fines, the awareness, the warm bodies. When I first started with Farm Bureau almost 20 years ago, we'd hear stories of some of the windward banana farmers that would kind of plant along the border of their property, knowing that those bananas are going to be stolen. Right? That was like, they kind of knew that those were going to be stolen. The ones on the inside is their farm, for their farm. And that's unfortunate. No one should ever have to do that. Why are you going to plant for somebody else? And so we believe Duke's Law will help. Will it solve everything? It won't. But it's a really good start to address this growing problem that farmers and ranchers are dealing with every day, as Lani said.
Well, and the thing is that they ignite very quickly. At night, they got guns, but we're not going to go out without one. And things escalate very quickly.
Very quickly.
Very, very quickly. And so I'm very happy that this law is passed. It's the start.
It's the start.
It's just the start. And it's to bring some awareness to the community. And is that Chris from Waimanalo?
Yes.
Yeah, amen. Thank you. Right on,
He's
Chris.
spot on. Those are,
Right
he's
on.
addressed all the challenges. And again, to have a new director of law enforcement come in and really embrace ag crimes and really wanted to help the farmers and ranchers, I think we couldn't ask for a better director. I know Senator talks to him quite often, and he is ready to go. It was their idea to do the drones and to do some of, they're looking at what other jurisdictions are doing. We also have, for the first time that I've seen, an ag crimes tip line.
Yep, and you'll get a warm body. Someone will answer it. Yep.
Yes, there's an ag crimes tip line. So we've seen in such a short period of time, because of an unfortunate death, a lot of activity to hopefully address agricultural crimes here in Hawaii.
Lani also helped make this a national deal. While we were working on this, and initially part of this was a stand your ground law that has been put on the side as we're getting a ruling from the Attorney General. But the agricultural crime portion of this, Lani introduced a resolution
To National Cattlemen Beef Association in San Antonio in February, and it was accepted at committee. It's going to the full membership
in
July.
June. Is it July?
July.
And the president of National Cattlemen's, Mark Eisel, has been using Cranston and the Cranston law as a talking point as he goes across the nation, talking about ag crimes. And as Lani said, she introduced this resolution, again, awareness and getting the community to understand and then support what we're trying to get done legally.
You mentioned the tip line. What can people like myself, who's not a farmer, not a rancher, what can we do? Like, are there things that we can be on the lookout for, maybe when we're purchasing a plant or fruits and vegetables at the farmer's market? Like, is there anything the public can do to help?
Sure. If you see something that doesn't seem right, you have a tip line. Call it in. I'm from the North Hawaii. In Waimea, we have a strawberry grower, Louis Rincon. He's known for his strawberries. And I was driving by and I saw somebody picking strawberries in his field on a Sunday. I didn't recognize him. So I stopped and I asked him. And he said, oh yeah, I have permission. I said, I'm gonna call him. So I called Louis right away and he got out of there as quick as he could.
Wow.
Not simple, but yeah, see something, say something. Ask, when you're at the farmer's market, ask where this product came from. Chinatown, roadside stand. Ask some questions. We absolutely want people to buy local.
Yep.
Support your local farmers and ranchers. Go ahead and take one step further and go and ask, right? Just inquisitive.
Are there answers to be on the lookout for so that I would know if that's suspicious?
Great question.
Yeah, you know, I think probably there's a million answers to that question, depending if we're talking about bananas or cattle or pigs or eggs. Probably a little bit different, but I think from a consumer's part, if you see something that's not usual,
This doesn't feel right.
yeah,
Like they don't know where it's
Where'd you
grown?
get all of these from? Where's your farm at? Well, this is mine. A lot of times they'll say this is my farm, or they may not even be a farmer. They just may be a third-party seller. Ask a little bit of questions. Oh, what farm? Oh, my farm. Oh, where's your farm at? It's hard to track down where those products came from, right? And again, if there's a QR or barcode, they can just take that off, right? Even the boxes, we kind of, everybody uses the same boxes, so it's really hard to identify. So you do have to, we're going to ask the public to ask a few questions to make sure that they are buying local, make sure that it's local. We want you to support the local farmers and ranchers, and just ask a couple of questions. Get to know your farmer, get to know where that product's from. You can go a long way, and if you, again, see something, say something. There's a tip line. Call it in. We've got a dedicated law enforcement branch now that's going to go out there and investigate some of these. There are laws on the books on ownership and movement. So hopefully with this new law enforcement branch, we'll have people that now when you call the tip line, somebody will answer and somebody will investigate, even if you are a little bit suspicious. We're not saying everybody's doing everything wrong, but just if it doesn't feel right, go ahead, call that tip line.
Do you have the number on hand? Can you say it slowly if you do?
I do. It is 808-427-3323.
427
3323.
3323. Okay. And who's running the tip line?
Department of Ag.
I'm also curious if maybe, even if you think like something was being sold for too cheap, could that count as something that might be worthy of giving a call?
It could. And again, as we talked about earlier, if you're stealing it, didn't cost you anything really. as far as your inputs, your production, so you could sell it for less than what the farmer would normally sell it for. I mean, if it's just extremely cheap or there's a lot of it, it's on a roadside stand, and ask some questions, and those are the things. And again, we don't want to accuse anyone. We've got some really hardworking farmers who are selling at the farmers markets. We run farmers markets to Chinatown. We encourage roadside stands, absolutely. So we're not accusing anybody, but if it just doesn't feel right, ask some questions and you'll get some answers.
So getting a little bit more specific to like some cases that have come across my desk, some things that would be suspicious because we're dealing with farms, the manner of which it would be transported usually would be like maybe a commercial vehicle, right? And so if these people are transporting, if like their Honda Civics overloaded with like avocados or bananas, so that's something that's suspicious, you know, that like, you know, maybe you can call the tip line and have that at least checked out, see if they have a moving certificate.
They got it in a garbage bag versus a
Right.
box, a case.
Right, that kind of stuff, you know.
But then you ask those questions, and then with the dedicated law enforcement, they'll start coming to ask questions. And as we start building that, then I think we'll start to see impact.
So you're saying like a legit farmer should, not in all cases, but likely have their fruits, vegetables, whatever it may be, in a little bit more of a legit
They'll be handled
pack.
differently.
Okay.
And if you ask them, they're going to be very comfortable about it.
Yeah. It should be prideful, I would
Yeah,
think.
exactly.
We've got a couple other viewer questions. This one is from Eric on YouTube. He's asking, how effective has the public media releases been in deterring ag crime? I feel that it is effective in both public awareness and also letting the public know who the habitual offenders are.
I'm going to say I don't think it's one step. I think that's going to help, but that'll help law enforcement, that'll help prosecution. But I think you have to have multi-facets. What do you guys think?
Public media,
Yeah,
I'm not really sure about any public media that's really being done. And unfortunately, a lot of the ag crimes that happen to farmers, you don't hear about unless they're big, high-profile crimes. So public media, again, when we talk about awareness, that'd be great. Hopefully, maybe, if the governor, and we hope the governor will sign this bill, there can be some outreach and some education, and again, working with the county police, the county prosecutors, entire law enforcement community, and doing some outreach and letting everybody know what the new law is, what the impact to farmers with something like this. This is a public outreach here.
Yep.
So as far as public media, I'm not sure. I'm not really aware of any dedicated PR program, but that's not necessarily a bad idea. Again, the more awareness, we think the better it's going to be for the farming community.
Ed from Maui is asking, how does aquaculture and aquaponics fit into this conversation, if at all?
It's agriculture.
They're part of ag.
Part of
They're no,
agriculture.
yep.
Absolutely.
And would ag crimes target them as well?
Oh, yeah.
In a different way, or?
Again, everything is so commodity specific. If you steal cattle versus tomatoes versus something in aquaculture, it's all agriculture. The details are different, but absolutely, it's part of the agriculture.
If there's a market, next to our office in Kunia, you have Kunia Country Farms. They have an aquaponics farm there. They have tilapia there. If there's a market, why wouldn't somebody steal a tilapia?
Yeah. Roman from Honolulu has a question, and I actually think it relates to something we all talked about before we went on air that I think should get brought up about, Lani, how you were telling me that you want to work with the community and raise awareness about this. Roman is saying, at some point in their life, these criminals were part of our community. Can you address the root problem as to what's happening to cause people to steal or feel alienated from their own society? Senator Richards, I think you told me too, again, this was before we went on air, but about how important it is to educate the community, and more so, maybe even more so than it is to have enforcement.
Yeah, and Lani, weigh in on this too, but how did we lose them from society, I think is what the question was. Part of it, we talked about this, sometimes this becomes generational, and that's something we have to address. We also have to have the society help us if they see something that's unusual, not quite right. And I mean, it's a big question for how we lose someone. There's other things going on because our cost of livings here are high. We understand that. You know, the funny part is usually almost any farmer or rancher, if you're hungry and you ask them, they're going to feed you. That's just what we do. And sometimes to the detriment of the farmer and rancher. But that's a bigger question than we can answer here. That kind of blends into our society as a whole.
I think, though, it relates to the aspect you were talking about, how educating the community is so crucial to, like, you were telling me the story, was it about the uncle?
Uncles.
Who spoke to, was it their kid or something like that? Could you retell that story?
Yeah, it happened on the Big Island. You're talking about where the truck and trailer, yeah. Truck and trailer, and I think it was an ATV or UTV, but equipment that we talked about. Again, part of the ag theft. They figured out who stole it, and they went there, got their equipment back, and then had a very firm, I don't want to say discussion with them. And I would argue that they probably are rethinking a way of life that they may have been wanting to go down. And the point on that is that justice? I think we can argue it probably is, because they got their equipment back and probably helped out these guys going a better way in life. What we're hoping is that by putting this all together, we can also facilitate in doing that, increasing the crime, so it hurts. They take it in the pocketbook, as well as spending a little bit of time in jail to make them change. And again, the idea is not just hit them hard. It ramps up, but it ramps up quickly for punishment. So hopefully making a shift in that.
I want to chime in
Yeah.
a bit. So we feel very strongly that if you don't have a good social connection with your community, that you can't depend on law enforcement to take care of all your problems. So we have a system where people can get to the public hunting areas above the ranch. It's an all automated text messaging, and hundreds of people use this. And what happens is the people that use it kind of become this little eyes and ears. And so when people that are wanting to do bad things try to use the same access but deviate, they get told on. And it's the community policing the community. Yeah. So you get these outliers that the only way they can do what they want is to come in when it's nighttime. And so they kind of get alienated by the rest of the community. So I think the way that we've been running public access, I never realized how powerful it would be to have the whole community of people watching and caring and privileged. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's no rubbish. Nobody throws rubbish on those public accesses. They care. Mm-hmm. And so the outliers, they get pushed back. That's what's my 2 cents.
Lani?
Still coming onto your ranch, though, those outliers, aren't they? I mean, some.
Yeah.
I mean, crime is not unique to farming and ranching. So what are those underlying? I mean, it's crime. Years ago, Farm Bureau introduced a bill dealing with drug crimes. And people asked, why are you guys doing that? And we said, well, we think some of the criminals that are stealing from us are using it to purchase drugs, or they're getting money, right? For whatever reason, one of them may be drugs, and it didn't pass. I can't remember what it was, but I remember even for myself, I wasn't sure why. I mean, again, we don't know why people commit crimes. There's multiple reasons. But again, it's not unique to Hawaii. But yes, the story, the first time I heard that story also, where the community kind of, as Lani said, maybe police themselves. Yeah. Did some community justice, or uncle justice.
Auntie.
Yeah. Lani, what would you like to say to these people that are coming onto your property illegally without permission and doing bad things? If you could talk to them in a civil conversation.
I talk to them all the time. When I catch their dog, I have them meet me at the police station.
What do you say to them?
I said, I'm going to suspend your pass, and oh, don't do that. I'm like, well, don't do what you're doing. And you know, it's amazing. People grow up. And it's kind of neat to see some of the guys that used to give you a lot of trouble are just good guys now. That's very rewarding.
Do you tell them how it's impacting you and your ranch?
I don't see them that much. The fact that there's more integrity between the ranch and them, yeah, I think they know.
I want to read this one more comment from one of our viewers. We have a small farm in the Captain Cook area. We just had 6 ulu trees completely stripped in broad daylight. And that night, thieves came and stole all of our power tools out of our barn. It isn't big farms and cattle that are only being targeted.
Yep.
I think we covered that. Again, they come and they steal everything. It's not just the crops. It's the equipment, supplies. And so it isn't. Majority of Hawaii farms are small farms.
Yep.
So they are the targets. You know, going back to the previous question, we're hoping that with the Department of Law Enforcement, they can have that community engagement, not just with the farmers and ranchers, but with those that are looking to steal, to do some ag crimes, right? Working with, you know, or some, like how some police departments do in certain areas, right? They work with the community and they have these different programs. And, you know, maybe that might make a difference also, right? Working with the community, knowing who's there, knowing who has potential, and creating programs that will prevent them from becoming those that are impacting farmers and ranchers.
And hopefully more of this type of discussion to get the word out. Jeff, hearing these stories, hearing the comments from the viewers that are writing in, and you know what Lani and Senator Richards has to say about their own personal, you know, impact of how they've been impacted by ag crimes, is it frustrating to you?
Yeah, it's frustrating in the sense that when we ask for a sentence, like sometimes we don't get what we want, or what we don't get the, I guess the severity, as the senator is saying. So when we craft like a proposal or like a plea agreement, we do get input from the, I guess the victim, from the rancher or the farmer. And sometimes there's like pushback from the defense or from the court to, like, you know, maybe trying to lessen the amount. And I think part of it is not having, I guess, all the information. So like I said, like this is like helpful to get the sense of the, like the impact it has on the farmers and ranchers, because it's when we convey the recommendation to the judge, we need to be able to back it up. And so it's really helpful if we get the engagement of the farmers and ranchers, and writing these impact statements, how it impacted them when we make that sentencing argument. So the frustrating part for the prosecutors is that, like, you know, at the end of the day, it's still, the bottom line is we need that evidence. And so, like, I'm really looking forward to how this bill gets implemented and what kind of results that we can have from that. It'd be great to have like these dedicated officers to work with and stuff, because that way they can identify, like, oh, this area is a hot spot for like ag theft, you know, or that part's another hot spot for like you know, like cattle rustling or whatever.
So we have investigators and uniform officers.
Because when cases come up now, we have them as theft, we have them as criminal trespass. Like sometimes the underlying reason for those gets lost, you know. And so with somebody or the resources to actually track that, it'd be great actually. So then we can like focus in on those problem areas.
We only have 2 minutes left. Shockingly, it goes by fast. We could do a part 2. I'd love to just really quickly hear from both Brian and Senator Richards here. Can you reiterate for our viewers, what is the trickle-down effect and the impact? Why should our community care so much about this problem?
Don't we care about our farmers and ranchers? Don't we want to achieve our agriculture goals, more food self-sufficiency, doubling food production, supporting our farm to school, our farm to food bank, our institutional purchasing? We want more local. How do we do that when the farmer can't focus on farming, when they have to focus on ag crimes, when it's costing them much more? So it's going to raise the cost of food. I mean, $11.2 million for security. So if the farmer has to dedicate time, I mean, going to court, working with law enforcement, everything that's needing to get a loan to purchase to replace some of that equipment, not even breaking even on the crop that they were ready to harvest because it was stolen. Your mango trees are just stripped, or the ulu that you just brought up. Yeah. And so it will raise the cost of production. It will
Drive the kids from the family farm.
Right, not wanting to do it.
Kids don't want to stay at the farm.
And when Lani brought up the papaya trees, our understanding is that farmer never farmed again. Just stopped.
Stopped.
So you could lose farmers. We could lose ranchers. We could have our farming community say, no more.
Senator Richards, 30 seconds.
Agriculture is part of the community. We have to give it the credit it's due and the stewardship it's due. It's all part of us. Agriculture is a very small portion of the economy, but without it, we literally starve to death. So we need to help it.
Yeah.
Stewards of the land. We lose our farms and our ranchers and they're no longer on the land. Now we have urban development pressure there also.
And no
food. And a lot of bad's going to happen if we lose our farmers and ranchers.
Thank you so much, the four of you, for being here tonight. And another part of it, too, it's just the mental aspect. I'm sure mental stress on our farmers. We want to make sure that they are not lessen that stress. Mahalo for you, to you for joining us tonight. And of course, we want to thank our guests here in studio, Senator Tim Richards and Brian Miyamoto from the Hawaii Farm Bureau, and Lani Cran Petrie from the Hawaii Cattlemen's Council, and Hawaii County Deputy Prosecuting Attorney Jeff Malate. Thank you all again. Next week, the 2025 Legislative Review, we take a look at what measures passed and didn't pass this session, plus the issues still left unresolved as the changes on the federal level continue to have an impact here in the islands. Please join us then. Have a great night.
Local broadcasts of Insights on PBS Hawaiʻi are made possible by the support of viewers like you. Mahalo, and by Carl Smith Ball, providing legal services throughout Hawaii